Greetings, Realm Lords, COR here, and I'm going to tell you guys about something I've been obsessing about for the last few months, and that is my 3D printer. Now, I wasn't expecting to get a 3D printer anytime soon, but my wife and I were going for a walk through our neighborhood, and we stumbled upon a garage sale where somebody who couldn't get his working was selling it for $40. And I was like, whoa, I can't pass up a 3D printer for $40. So I bought it. I spent an ungodly amount of time trying to figure out how to get it working. 3D printers are not very user-friendly, in my opinion. But, you know, if I can figure this out, surely I can figure one of those out. And I did eventually. So now I've been 3D printing all sorts of things for my various board games. But, of course, I've also been 3D printing stuff for the Circle of Realms. So here it is in all its glory. I figured I had to show you because I've basically been showing every single person who comes to my house my 3D printer. Here it is printing out something for the Circle of Realms. Now, I find it surprisingly difficult to figure out how to calibrate and set up a 3D printer to print things. And likewise, I found it surprisingly easy to figure out how to design and print your own things, at least things that are based on geometric shapes and measurements. So what I did is I used a program called Autodesk Fusion, I think, to mock up some new and improved things for the Circle of Realms, and here is one of them printing right now. Of course, in an ideal world, I would have had this thing rotated the other way around when it was printing. I didn't realize until it was already printing that I had it printing basically backwards, so you can't really see any of the details. It's just a big white blob, but let me show you what it is right here when it's done. So that little white blob ended up becoming one of these over here, which is a dice holder. Put a dice in the top of it. This one is for the 6-sided die, so I put the 6 sticker on it. And the cool thing about these is they lock right onto the rim of my board. So I can put a bunch of dice holders on the side of the board. So to show you guys why this is so cool to me, let me walk you through some history of the Circle of Realms. When I first started making this game, we just used a big expo board to record everything, damage and tech gauges and stuff like that. And then eventually I got way more sophisticated. I moved away from the expo board and I set up like a really cool, fancy spreadsheet. It didn't even really look like a spreadsheet anymore. It had so many like images and stuff like that to make it look almost like a website, a lot like the website I have now actually, which you can check out at www.circleofrealms.com. But anyway, we used this spreadsheet to record everything, and I projected it onto a TV, and so I had this really advanced technological setup, and that was very cool. I enjoyed it a lot. But one of the things I'm committing to now is to actually kind of take a step back and eliminate all of that technology. It was cool that I was able to do that, but Circle of Realms is a tabletop game. It's not a computer game. It's not a video game. I don't want to bog it down with a bunch of technology. I don't want to bring in screens outside of our phones to like look up unit stats when I don't have to. And so what the 3D printer does is it allows me to make a bunch of little holders for things on the side of the table, ways to record things on the side of the table that I otherwise would have needed technology to record in the past. This is really important because now I use a lot of cards to keep track of stuff in the Circle of Realms. And the last time I played, those cards could kind of get all over the place. And so I'm thinking with 3D printed holders for my cards along the sides of the table, we can kind of free up the table surface area. My goal is to make it so that really only things that are actually on the table, units and weapons and stuff like that, will be on the table. Otherwise, everything else will have holders on the sides of the table. Obviously, we'll have to roll dice on some surface somewhere, but other than that, everything else should be free from the table and it should look very good too. So here they are in all their glory. These are separate dice holders for each of my different dice that I need in the Circle of Realms. So we've got this little 2 guy with the 2 dice. There's a nice little spot here for your finger to run through to scoop the dice out, so you don't ever have to take them off of the rim. You can just grab each dice pretty easily. And it's a nice way of displaying them too. They look good like this, in my opinion at least. The way that I shaped the inside for just about every die, it holds it very nicely. So that insert is great for this little 8-sided die, but it's just as good for, I don't know, this D20 also fits very nicely into the top of it. I did print a rather ugly holder for my dismemberment die. Here that is. I tried printing a label, 3D printing the label for it, but I just think that it came out looking a little bit subpar. But it does still hold the die very nicely. And maybe I'll just replace that with a sticker of some sort or something down the road. Now, I haven't just been 3D printing dice holders. If I move these out of the way, or if we say I move some of them out of the way, that should make enough room for me to slide this bad boy in. So this is the new and improved card holder for my factions. It's got plenty of space for 10 different card decks, which will be useful for some of the other rule changes I've made to how the economy works. We're gonna want a few extra card holding slots for each player. But in general, this is a huge upgrade from what I had in the past. If I push this over to the side, let me find one of those other ones. So if you watch my playthrough video, you might remember these card holders over here. These were very much a prototype for what I was going for. Just kind of like a proof of concept that I could put the cards on the side of the table, like so. And I mean, like, this worked, but it looks a little janky. It feels a little janky. That's because it is a little janky, if I'm being honest, as opposed to this 3D printed card holder, which doesn't really have any issues at all. This thing looks good. It takes up actually less space than this one, even though the 3D printed holder holds what, 1, 2, 3, 4 more decks than this other one held. So it's altogether a huge upgrade. So yeah, that's what I've been 3D printing. But you know, while I'm at it, since I'm talking about stuff I've been locking into the sides of the table, there's one last thing I want to show you. I built it out of Legos. It's not a 3D print, but it is a way to keep track of our day and night. So last time I played, I actually forgot to make a physical way to record day versus night. That was something that my computer program used to keep track of back in the day. And obviously it's not too hard to mark off day and night in some way, shape, or form, but I wanted a nice, elegant, and visually satisfying way to do it. And so I built this little slider right here. So this is an indicator that sits at the side of the table, and it just has a slider up on the top. And if we slide it over, it shows daytime. If we slide it the other way, it shows nighttime. It's a very simple build. It's definitely nothing to be particularly proud of. Basically, I don't know if I can get this open at this angle. Oh yeah, it turns out it was really easy to get open. But basically, I've got these little, I'm using these little Lego pieces that have this little groove in it to create a slider on the bottom. And then I have put some bricks in to block that from sliding too far in one direction. Same thing over here. And then up on top, I originally was going to do sliders, but instead of doing sliders, I made room for these tiles to put this little switch in. I also got to use one of my Lego tile pieces that's really messed up looking. Multiple points for using a garbage piece and getting it into a build. But yeah, otherwise it sits on this thing that's definitely not Lego. I don't know where this ultimately came from. One of my students gave me a bin of their old Legos in there, and it just had it in it, so I put that to use. But obviously, this wouldn't be too hard to make with just straight up Lego pieces. Not exactly cheating here at all, just trying to use some of that plastic. And it just pops in and sits on the side of the table. So that's a good little slider and indicator. So we might call this a prototype as well, although I'm very satisfied with the way it looks. So it might be very, very close to the finished project. I might want to cover up these sides, but that would be probably the extent to which I would do anything to mess around with that. Otherwise, my friends, that's all I have to show here today in this video. So as always, if you're enjoying this content, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And other than that, I guess I'll just say, good night to everybody. Be happy, be healthy, be well, and I'll see you next time here in the Circle of Realms.